You're looking at the JG P90 Tri Rail. We at Airsoft Reports have always been fans of the P90's futuristic and compact design, and we've generally had good luck with JG as a brand. What's more, we've gotten so many requests from you, the viewers, to review more P90s that we decided to look at this modestly priced contender. In this video, you'll see what faults and strengths the JG P90 Tri Rail has, and hopefully this will give you the info you'll need if you're in the market for an airsoft gun. We'll start our quality report by working from the butt plate of the gun towards the muzzle and covering everything in between. The first thing we noticed on this end of the gun was the nice, soft touch material used on the butt plate. Of course, in airsoft, the butt plate rarely, if ever, absorbs any recoil, but we were impressed by this minor detail. Now, for those of you who haven't seen the P90 style butt plate before, we'll give you a brief primer. First off, to remove the butt plate, look for the release button located on the underside of the plate on the bottom side of the gun. Now simply push this button, pushing down on the butt plate, and remove it. Once you've got the butt plate off, you'll be able to see the cramped battery compartment. The P90 isn't a big gun, and there's very little real estate in which to house the battery and all of the peripherals. We found this out after a few frustrated attempts at getting the battery, fuse holder, and wiring to fit in the gun and still allow the butt plate to have enough clearance to lock in. Thankfully, you can learn from our mistakes. First, insert the fuse holder into the small space just below the battery compartment. Once you've done this, you should have the space to wrap the wiring, insert the battery, and then get the butt plate locked on. Note, the battery we're using here is an 8.4 volt 1100 milliamp unit. As with other P90s that we've tested, the integral rear sling mount is located on the bottom rear portion of the gun, just forward of the butt plate release button. We've not yet had this mount break as the gun is relatively light, and the mount itself feels quite sturdy. The forward sling mount is located on the top portion of the receiver, just above the magazine. This mounting point is also integral, though this time it is mounted within the metal receiver instead of the lower gun frame. P90 fans know that the real steel ejects its spent casings through a vertical chamber located just behind the rear handrest. In this airsoft version, there is of course no need for a functional chamber, and instead there is a small, non-functioning cover marking where the real steel version would have expelled its spent brass. Inserting and replacing a magazine on the P90 is a unique and initially alien affair. Hopefully, after you've seen how it's done here, you should be able to do a quick mag swap with little or no problem. First off, the mag release is actually one solid bar that has two exposed tabs, with one on each side of the gun. You need to pull both of these tabs back in order to fully release the mag. As you're pulling the tabs back, you should be pulling the magazine up, back, and free of the magwell area. Once you've got this motion down, replacement of the mag is really a simple affair, as all you've got to do is reverse what you just did. Speaking of the magazine, this shot gives you a great view of the fake bullets that line the inside of the mag. They look exactly like the real cartridges, and they help to add a really cool look to the gun in general. Because this is a mid-cap mag, you have a capacity of about 70 BBs, give or take, and you load it by forcing the BBs through the BB port. To do this, I like to use a speed loader, as loading one BB at a time is both difficult and painfully slow. With the mag off, you can see where the BBs enter the gun via the back portion of the hop-up assembly. It's good to note the position of this port, because it will help you do a visual confirmation that everything is seated properly when reinstalling the receiver. Now, locate the rectangular button just forward of the feed port and push it, while at the same time applying gentle forward pressure on the metal receiver. Once you've got the receiver assembly off, you'll see the hop-up, the inner barrel, and the charging handle spring assembly. This is good info to have if you plan on owning this gun, as this will be one of the first steps you take to doing light maintenance and/or hop-up and barrel upgrades. Speaking of the barrel, now is a perfect time to show you how it's removed. The hop-up has a plastic tab on it that allows it to lock into place. You need to rotate the hop-up unit until the plastic tab is allowed to pass backwards through the opening in the receiver. Once the tab is clear, you'll see that the barrel itself can be easily removed. One thing I need to mention though is that there are spacers that actually allow the barrel to sit evenly within the interior portions of that metal receiver. Watch for those, because if you pull the barrel out, they tend to fall out. Okay, so now we've got the receiver detached, it's time to show you how to put it back together. It's not complicated, but you've got to align the parts correctly, otherwise you can jam things up a bit. The best method of reinstallation that we found is to line up the large hole on the lower front portion of the receiver with a large round cylinder on the lower portion of the gun. Now, while you're sliding the receiver backwards, make sure to verify that the cylinder and the hole we just pointed out are in alignment. Once these are aligned, all you need to do is continue to apply a little more pressure backwards on the receiver to make sure that the takedown button pops up and it's flush. Also, check to make sure the feed port is properly aligned. Just behind the trigger is the thumb hole and grip area. This space acts as the handle for the shooting hand, and this is also where the hop-up access port is located. To JG's credit, they did a good job of making sure the grip area was devoid of uncomfortable seams and molding lines. The first time we handled an Airsoft P90, it took us a little while to figure out where the hop-up adjustment point was. That's because the hop-up wheel is tucked into a small compartment that's protected by a small rectangular sliding door just above the thumb hole area. To adjust the hop-up, simply slide the door open and turn the wheel. It's not the easiest thing to do quickly, but on the flip side, it probably won't get accidentally bumped either. Now, so far in this review, we've talked about the metal receiver a fair amount, and for good reason. The metal really does make the gun feel more qualitative. Still, we've yet to talk about the rails, and after all, that's the point of having a tri-rail model. In this case, you get one full-length rail on the top with two stubby rail type mounts on either side. Hence, you've got some nice options when it comes to mounting optics and other accessories. Many times, even though the charging handles are fun to play with on most airsoft guns, they can be delicate and should be used with care. Fortunately, on the P90, while it is always good to use care in handling, the ambidextrous cocking handle doesn't do a thing, and what's more, it's pretty tough and can usually take some use and abuse. The trigger on the P90 has two stages. The first fires the gun in semi-automatic mode, while the second fires the gun in full auto mode. There is a selector switch that can be used to lock out full auto or put the gun on safe, and while it feels a little flimsy, it does click through its positions quite nicely. When the gun is in the full auto mode, you have the opportunity to depress the trigger halfway and fire one BB at a time, or depress the trigger fully and fire as many BBs as you've got in your magazine. This trigger system is similar to the one used in the Steyr AUG, and love it or hate it, this is the way the P90 is designed. In our view, it can be an advantage on the field where fractions of a second can matter. Moving to the muzzle of the gun, we come to the gun's biggest flaw. The included orange flash hider was one of the cheapest we've ever seen. In this case, it's barely more than a piece of angle-cut orange tubing that was basically jammed on the end of the barrel. Ours wasn't even threaded and is only held on by friction. Fortunately, if this is the gun's biggest design flaw, then the gun is doing alright, as most players we've seen remove the orange tip in favor of something else. Not that we approve of this practice per se, but it is an observation that we've made. Also located on the end of the gun is the locking collar, which presumably would act as a backstop for any muzzle attachment. The collar is made of metal, but the metal is rather soft, and the collar is concave, so only a very few threads actually contact the outer metal barrel. This means that we have to be very careful to screw the collar on counterclockwise in the correct alignment so as to avoid stripping or misaligning the threads. Although this fact did cause the gun to have points deducted, we would like to note that at least one of the competing P90s suffers from the same shortcoming. Okay, so there you go. You've seen everything that the JG P90 Tri Rail has to offer as far as its form and function go. We give this gun an A- grade because for the price, it offers a very attractive package. The metal Tri Rail really helped to boost this gun's score, and we've handled P90s that didn't have the metal rail, and we can honestly say they really didn't feel as good as this one did. Plus, everything on the gun functioned as it should, and the biggest problem that we had was a cheapo flash hider and a flimsy locking collar. Because those two items are rarely used in everyday operation, they didn't detract too much from the overall score. Add to this package the fact that we didn't have to take any sandpaper to the seams, and the fact that the gun shoots as hot as 440 feet per second, and you've got a very potent little powerhouse. You're not hearing things. I just said that we clocked our test model shooting as high as 440 feet per second. We usually wait till the firing report to mention the velocity, but in this case we were really surprised at the results, and they influenced our overall grade, so we thought we should mention it here. I know we'll get questions about this, so just so you know, the lowest Kroner reading was 370 feet per second using the .20 gram BBs, but the average was right around 410 to 420. So now remember that this is a $120 gun, and when you factor that in, you may see why we've given this gun such a high rating. In conclusion, if you're in the market for a P90 style airsoft gun, we suggest you take a good look at the modestly priced, hard-hitting JG P90.